When I walked into the kitchen and saw Laura laughing with a man I had never seen before, I didn't think affair at first. My initial thought, honestly, was that I must have forgotten about some social plan she made. You know how it goes. She tells me we're having people over. I nod while half focused on whatever I'm fixing on the laptop, and then I'm surprised when there's a stranger in my house. That happened once with her cousin, so I figured this might be another one of those situations. He was tall, fit, kind of overdressed for a casual Thursday, wearing one of those tight, chest-hugging shirts guys wear when they want to be noticed, and his voice carried through the kitchen like he owned the place. Laura didn't look shocked to see me home early from work, just slightly thrown off, like a kid caught watching TV before finishing their homework. She waved a hand casually and said, "Oh, hey babe, this is Ian. He's helping me with the art piece I told you about." The thing is, she hadn't told me about any art piece. Not once. And Laura's not even into art, unless binge-watching true crime documentaries now counts as high culture. I stepped further in, trying not to let the obvious confusion on my face translate into anything more than a polite smile. "Art piece?" I asked, my eyes locked on Ian, who had the kind of posture that screamed confidence or arrogance. I hadn't decided yet. Laura laughed and brushed some imaginary dust off her jeans like she was trying to appear casual, and said, "Yeah, I've been helping the community center with this charity auction. They're doing a mural or installation or something, and Ian here's the lead designer." Ian extended his hand to me, firm grip, full eye contact, like he wanted me to know he wasn't afraid of me. "Nice to meet you, man," he said, as if he had already memorized the script for this little play. I shook his hand, and something about it felt off, too firm, too rehearsed, like he was trying to prove something that didn't need proving. "I thought you were at the office today?" she asked, grabbing two mismatched mugs from the cabinet, even though I knew we had matching ones. I shrugged and said, "Server outage. Boss told us all to head out early." I watched her body language closely. She didn't freeze or fumble, but she started moving faster than usual, like someone was trying to wrap up a scene before the credits rolled. Ian took a sip from the mug she handed him and made a show of complimenting the coffee, which was hilarious because Laura never made coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and this guy looked like the type who lived on triple espressos. I leaned against the kitchen counter and crossed my arms, letting the silence stretch a little. "So how long have you two been working on this art thing?" I asked. Laura jumped in a little too quickly. "Just a few weeks. It's kind of last minute. You know how these nonprofit projects are." Ian nodded, backing her up like they'd rehearsed it. "Yeah, lots of moving parts. But your wife's been amazing with organizing everything." There it was again, your wife. The way he said it felt more like a reminder to himself than a statement for me. I kept a straight face and said nothing, just nodded and glanced at my watch. "Well, don't let me interrupt. I'm gonna grab a shower and let you two finish up," I said, pushing myself off the counter and heading upstairs. I didn't look back, but I listened. Their voices dropped low once I turned the corner, the kind of hush that didn't come from modesty or politeness. It came from guilt. When I got to the top of the stairs, I didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, I walked quietly back to the guest room, which shares a vent with the kitchen. I crouched by it, like some idiot in a bad spy movie, but I had a feeling, and I've learned not to ignore those feelings. Through the vent, I heard Ian say, "That was close." Laura laughed, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. "He's not suspicious. Kevin's too wrapped up in work stuff to notice half the things going on." Then Ian said something that made my stomach tighten like a fist. "You sure you're going to be okay with me coming by tomorrow?" And she said, "Yeah, he's got that tech conference. He'll be gone all day." That was the first time I felt it, the shift. Not confusion, not jealousy, but something colder. That's when I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding or a new friend she forgot to mention. Something was happening in my house, right under my nose, and they didn't even bother hiding it properly. The next morning I pretended nothing had changed. I kissed Laura on the forehead like I always did, told her I was heading out early for the conference, and she smiled with that same casual expression, the one I used to think meant comfort. I wasn't going to any damn conference. I drove 3 blocks over, parked by the corner cafe, and walked the rest of the way back through the alleys, cutting behind the row of houses until I reached ours from the back fence. The plan wasn't complicated. I'd left the side basement window unlatched a week ago when I was fixing the dryer vent, and it still slid open just enough for me to squeeze through. I knew she'd be busy in the kitchen around 10. She always turned on music and started prepping lunch. Same routine every Friday when she worked from home. I waited until I heard the low hum of whatever pop garbage she liked, then slipped inside and down the basement steps. I didn't move for 20 minutes. I just sat in the darkness listening. She was on the phone with someone, her voice too light, too giggly. It wasn't how she talked to coworkers. She said something about a quick shower before he gets here, and my stomach tightened. I knew who she meant, but I needed to see it. I needed the kind of clarity that only comes from watching someone's actions with your own eyes. I crept up the stairs, leaving the basement door just slightly open so I could see through the crack. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I heard the front door open, and then his voice, louder than it needed to be, like he thought announcing his arrival made it more legitimate. She greeted him in a tone I hadn't heard in months, not since before the smiles started feeling forced. "You're early," she said, and he answered, "Couldn't wait. You smell amazing, by the way." I stayed crouched, unmoving, while they passed into the living room. I stepped back down into the basement and opened the storage cabinet. Inside, I kept one of those old camcorders with the mini tapes, a leftover from when we thought documenting every vacation was essential. I charged it last night. I slid it into a bag and crawled through the window again, walked back around the block, got into my car, and drove to the gas station across from our neighborhood. From the parking lot, I had a clear view of the front of our house. I set up the camera on the passenger seat, pointed it toward the living room window, and zoomed in as much as I could. It wasn't perfect, but it caught the important parts. Laura opening the curtains slightly. Ian sitting way too comfortably on the couch. Her disappearing, then returning with 2 drinks. They laughed, touched hands, leaned in. And then she straddled him. I hit record and sat there watching the screen while every part of me screamed to do something, to run across the street, kick in the door, drag them both out by the hair, but I stayed seated because I needed to be sure. I needed this to be undeniable, even to myself. It lasted 26 minutes. She walked him to the door, kissed him again, and shut it behind him like nothing had happened. I didn't go home. I drove to the edge of town, parked in a quiet lot, and just sat there staring at the camcorder. I rewound the tape and watched the whole thing again, not because I enjoyed it, but because I still didn't believe it. There was a part of me that wanted to think I misunderstood something, that maybe this was some weird role-playing thing, or maybe she was acting out a scene for a friend's film project. It was stupid, but your mind goes there when the truth hurts more than it should. Eventually, I went to a cheap motel and checked in without luggage. The lady at the front desk didn't even raise an eyebrow, just handed me the key and pointed to the vending machine. I locked the door behind me, sat on the edge of the bed, and watched the tape one more time. Afterward, I laid back, closed my eyes, and let the weight of it all hit me. That night she called me twice. I didn't answer. She texted me once, asked if the conference went well. I turned off my phone. I didn't sleep, not really. My brain wouldn't stop racing. I thought about all the conversations we'd had lately, every smile that now felt fake, every excuse that suddenly made sense. The lies weren't even clever. They were just lazy. She didn't even bother to change the way she acted when she saw me. Maybe she thought I'd never suspect anything. Maybe she thought I didn't care. I don't know what's worse, that she did it, or that she didn't even feel the need to hide it properly. By morning, I had a plan forming. It wasn't clear yet, but the rage that was boiling under the surface was starting to take shape into something I could work with. I wasn't going to scream or beg or cry. I wasn't going to play the role of the betrayed husband who drinks himself stupid and moves in with a friend. No, I was going to do what she didn't expect. I was going to stay calm, stay in control, and make sure she understood exactly what she destroyed and what it would cost her. I got back home just after noon the next day. I didn't sneak in this time. I walked right through the front door, holding a grocery bag with 2 sandwiches inside like nothing was wrong. Laura was in the kitchen, standing by the sink, scrolling through something on her phone with a half-finished smoothie next to her. She looked up and smiled like it was any other Saturday, like the last 48 hours hadn't meant anything, like she wasn't doing what she did while I stood 20 feet away on the other side of a wall, watching her lose every last piece of respect I ever had for her. I set the bag down on the counter and said, "Figured I'd grab us some lunch." She tilted her head a little, the way she does when she's trying to read me, and asked, "Did the conference get canceled?" I took out one of the sandwiches, unwrapped it slowly, and bit into it before answering. No, I just didn't go. She froze for a second, then tried to play it off by walking over and opening the fridge like she didn't care. You're acting weird, she said, pulling out a bottle of water and twisting the cap. I leaned on the counter and watched her take a sip. You had someone here yesterday, I said, calm, clear, not raising my voice. Her reaction wasn't immediate. She took another sip, closed the fridge, and only then turned to face me. What are you talking about? Her voice didn't shake, which almost impressed me. She actually thought she could deny it. Ian was here. I saw both of you. I didn't go to the conference, Laura. I was watching from across the street. I recorded the whole thing. For the first time, I saw her blink too much, like her brain was running through scenarios trying to figure out which version of the lie would hurt less. You watched us? She said, trying to make me the problem, shifting the focus like it mattered. You seriously sat there and recorded us like some stalker? I pushed the sandwich aside. Don't pretend this is about how I found out. You did it. You cheated in our house, Laura, while I was supposed to be at work. You didn't even try to hide it. She stepped back, pacing slightly, like she needed movement to think. You're twisting this into something it's not, she said, still clinging to the idea that there was a way out. It's not what you think. I stared at her. You sat on that couch with him. You kissed him. He touched you. You pulled him upstairs. If that's not what I think, then tell me what it is. Was that part of the community mural too? She stopped walking and looked at me with a mix of panic and defiance. You've been distant for months. You barely talk to me unless it's about bills or groceries. Do you even remember the last time we had sex and it didn't feel like a chore to you? I let her speak, not because I cared about her excuses, but because I wanted to hear what kind of story she thought could undo what I saw. Ian made me feel something, she continued, her voice rising a bit now. Something I haven't felt in a long time. And it wasn't supposed to go that far. It just happened. I didn't plan it. I pushed myself off the counter and walked around to stand in front of her. You invited him here. You kissed him like you meant it. You went upstairs. That's not a mistake, Laura. That's a decision. You made a choice. She shook her head, tears forming now. I didn't mean to hurt you, Kevin. I swear. I didn't even know how far it was going until it was too late. He was just supposed to stop by for a few minutes. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how pathetic it all sounded. A few minutes. That's what you're sticking with. She stepped toward me, reaching out, but I stepped back. Don't, I said. Don't touch me. You lost that right the moment you let him in. You chose him over us. Over this. I still love you, she whispered. That one made my jaw tighten. You don't cheat on someone you love. You cheat on someone you stopped respecting. She cried harder now, covering her face, sitting down at the kitchen table like the weight of it all just hit her. I didn't comfort her. I didn't sit next to her or pat her back. I just stood there and watched her finally realize she wasn't getting out of this with some apology and a couple of tears. Do you want a divorce? I asked. Her head snapped up. No. God, no. Please. Don't throw this away because of one mistake. I nodded slowly. One mistake. Right. Just one. One mistake that you repeated for who knows how long. One mistake that you planned. One mistake that happened while I was still trying to figure out what the hell was going wrong with us. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. I'm not deciding anything today, I said. But I'm not sleeping here tonight. I'll pack a bag. Stay at my brother's. And you better figure out what kind of person you really are, because the version you showed me yesterday, I don't want to be near that. I didn't go to my brother's that night. That was a lie to get her to stop crying and give me some space to think. Instead, I drove downtown and parked outside the bar where Ian worked. I'd done my research the night before. It turned out he wasn't some celebrated designer or artist. He worked part-time at a trendy bar that hosted open mic poetry nights and sold overpriced cocktails. The rest of his time was filled with fake projects and social media posts about collaborations that didn't exist. He was exactly the kind of guy who charmed bored women by pretending to be deeper than he actually was. Laura didn't just cheat. She fell for someone who thought quoting movie lines made him profound. I sat in my car until I saw him step out the side entrance around midnight. He was with another guy, both of them laughing, probably at some story that didn't matter. I waited until they split up, then followed Ian on foot until he turned the corner near the bus stop. That's when I caught up to him. I didn't punch him. I didn't yell. I just tapped his shoulder, and when he turned around, I said, "You were in my house." He blinked, looked confused at first, then something in his face shifted when he realized who I was. Kevin, right? Look, man, this is really awkward. I cut him off. Don't talk. Just listen. I stepped in closer, made sure he understood that I wasn't there to make a scene, but also wasn't afraid of him. You came into my house. You touched my wife. You acted like it was normal, like you were entitled to that. So now I'm going to take something from you. He looked around, clearly nervous now. Look, man, it wasn't like that. I didn't know you were still together. She told me. I raised my hand again. I said, don't talk. I took out my phone and showed him a photo of him and Laura kissing on our couch, just before they went upstairs. This is going to be sent to every potential employer you ever try to work with. Every time you put me down as a reference, which you will, because I own 3 of the digital marketing firms in this city now, this is what they'll see. Not just this photo. The video. The full clip. Don't bother changing careers either. I have friends who work in hiring for half the local agencies. He laughed a little, trying to play it off like I was bluffing. You don't even know my last name. I pulled a folded paper from my back pocket and handed it to him. It had his full name, address, social security number, recent credit report, and a list of contacts scraped from his phone's cloud backup. I know more than you think. And now, you're going to vanish. You're going to stop messaging her. You're going to quit your job and disappear from the city. If I hear you're still here next week, I will make sure your next apartment is a tent under the freeway. He looked at the paper, then back at me, and the fear was finally clear on his face. You're crazy, man. I nodded. I might be, but I'm also very, very good at what I do. And right now, what I do is erase people like you. The next morning, I went to the print shop and made 5 copies of the photo and 5 copies of the video transcript, with timestamps and locations clearly marked. I mailed one to Laura's parents with a note that said, "Ask your daughter what she's been doing while her husband was trying to save their marriage." Another went to her boss, who happened to be a family friend and someone who didn't tolerate workplace distractions. 2 others went to mutual friends who always looked at us like we were the perfect couple. I didn't send them to shame her. I sent them because I wanted the truth to be out in the open. I didn't want to be the one quietly suffering while she spun some story about us growing apart or not connecting anymore. I wanted her to face it. All of it. I stayed away from the house for 2 more days. She called me 9 times, left 4 voicemails, all some version of her begging to talk, saying she was sorry, that it was over with Ian, that she made a mistake. I didn't respond to any of them. On the 3rd day, I walked into the house just after sunset. She was sitting on the couch, the same one where I caught her. The television was on, muted, and she looked up at me like she'd been rehearsing what to say all day. You destroyed me, she said quietly. No, I answered. You did that when you opened the door and let him in. I just made sure it had consequences. She didn't cry this time. She just sat there on the edge of the couch, hunched forward with her elbows on her knees like she was waiting to be told how bad the damage was. I stood in the doorway for a few seconds before walking in and sitting in the armchair across from her. Neither of us spoke right away. I think we both knew that once this conversation started, there was no coming back from it. I watched her face for signs of regret, guilt, anything that resembled the person I used to trust. There was something there, but I couldn't tell if it was sadness or just the weight of everything crashing down now that she didn't have a lie to hide behind. I know what you've sent, she said finally, her voice low but steady. My dad called me this morning. My mom's not speaking to me. My boss had a meeting with HR. I'm probably going to get moved to another division if they don't fire me outright. She paused, looking down at her hands. You humiliated me. I leaned back in the chair, keeping my eyes on her. You didn't feel humiliated when you did it. You didn't care then. She flinched, but didn't argue. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of some gentle closure. I wasn't going to tell her I still loved her, or that we could work it out, or that people make mistakes. I was past that. I had sat with the betrayal long enough to feel the burn without trying to pretend it was something else. I want to talk, she said, lifting her head. I need to say this without you cutting me off. Just give me 5 minutes. I nodded slowly. Go. She shifted in her seat and took a breath. I started pulling away because I didn't feel seen anymore. Not just romantically, but in general. We stopped being partners. We stopped having conversations. Everything became routines, chores, errands, bills. You used to notice me. You used to ask me about things. And I know it sounds petty, but I missed that. I missed being someone who mattered outside of laundry and grocery lists. When Ian started showing interest, I didn't think it would go anywhere. I thought I could handle the attention without crossing a line. I was wrong. I didn't plan for it to become physical. I'm not excusing it. I just want you to understand the space I was in. I waited a beat before responding. You want me to understand why you betrayed me. Why you risked everything because you were bored. You want me to understand why you let some guy you barely know into our house and acted like it was nothing. She didn't respond to that. She looked away, her jaw tight. After a long pause, she said, I want to stay married. I didn't laugh, although it felt like a joke. I just shook my head. You want to stay married to keep your job, to keep the house, to avoid having to explain to more people why your life is falling apart. No, she snapped, finally showing some emotion. Because I still believe there's something worth fighting for. Because I think we got lost, both of us, and maybe this was my screw up, but I'm still here trying to fix it. I stared at her, quiet for a while. I thought about forgiving you. I really did. The night I first watched that video, I told myself maybe this was a one-time thing. Maybe you just lost your mind for a minute and you'd come back from it. But then I remembered every time you smiled at me while lying to my face. Every time I asked how your day was, and you fed me whatever story came to mind while still carrying the smell of another man. I remembered all the nights you left your phone face down and the way you locked your laptop and the excuses about errands that took too long. You didn't just screw up, Laura. You lived in it. You built a second life behind my back. She looked like she wanted to scream but didn't have the strength. So what now? She asked, not hiding the bitterness. You get to sit here and pretend like you were perfect? Like you didn't change? Like this is all my fault? No, I said, standing up. I wasn't perfect. But I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't throw away years of trust for a few hours of attention. She didn't respond. She just sat there staring at the floor like she couldn't look at me anymore. Maybe because she finally believed it was over. I walked toward the hallway, paused, then turned back once more. I'll be filing on Monday. You can stay here until you figure out where to go next. I won't make it ugly unless you try to. Do you still love me? She asked, not looking up. I looked at her, and for the first time since this all started, I felt completely certain. I don't even know who you are anymore. I didn't go back to the house again after that last conversation. I stayed in a small apartment above a hardware store that belonged to a friend from high school who didn't ask any questions. It had a mattress, a coffee machine, and just enough space for me to pace around when I couldn't sleep. That's all I needed. Laura sent 2 emails and 1 text over the next week, all saying the same thing in different words. She missed me. She didn't know how to move forward. She hoped I'd reconsider. I didn't answer any of them. The divorce papers were filed the following Monday, just like I told her they would be. I used a lawyer I trusted, someone who didn't care about playing nice or dragging things out. It was direct, clean. She didn't fight it. Maybe she knew better by then. The split wasn't about assets or who got what. We didn't have kids, so there was no custody to debate. She kept the house because I didn't want it. Every room in there was a reminder, and I wasn't about to torture myself living in a place filled with memories that now meant something completely different. I didn't take much, just what I'd already packed, a few personal items, my laptop, and the rest of my clothes. She offered to give me some of the furniture, the kitchen appliances, whatever she thought might make it seem like she was being generous. I told her to keep all of it. I ran into her once about 3 weeks after the paperwork went through. It was in the grocery store of all places, down the frozen foods aisle. She looked thinner, tired, like someone who hadn't been sleeping right. She froze when she saw me, then gave this half smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hey, she said. I nodded, kept pushing the cart, didn't even slow down. She stood there for a second like she was waiting for more, and when it didn't come, she turned around and left the aisle. That was the last time I saw her. What stuck with me most wasn't the betrayal or the lies, as brutal as they were. What stayed with me was how easily it all fell apart. We spent years building a life together, and in a matter of weeks, it unraveled completely. And not because of one bad decision, but because one person decided they didn't have to try anymore. That's what I learned through all of this. It's not always about the big mistakes. Sometimes it's about all the little choices people make when they think they can get away with it. Laura made her choices, and now she has to live with them. I have to live with mine too. Some people asked if I'd ever consider getting back out there, dating again. I told them I'm not in a rush. I need time to figure out who I am without her. I spent so many years being part of something that turned out to be fake that I forgot what it meant to just be alone. Not lonely, just alone. There's a difference. I don't mind the quiet anymore. I get up, I work, I cook for myself, I go on walks, and I sleep. It's basic, but it's honest. I don't lie to myself anymore. I don't make excuses for someone else's actions. I don't pretend like everything's fine when it isn't. I told my closest friends the truth. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't say we just grew apart or things didn't work out. I said she cheated. I said I caught her. I said I left. Some of them looked uncomfortable, like they didn't know how to react. But I didn't care. I wasn't telling them for sympathy. I was telling them because I was tired of hiding. That's what I'll take with me from this. Clarity. I know what happened. I know what I felt. I know what I did in response. And for once, I'm okay with not having to explain or justify it to anyone. If you ask me whether I still think about her, the answer is yes. Not because I miss her, but because forgetting would mean none of it mattered. And it did. Every part of it mattered. The good years, the slow breakdown, the betrayal, the fallout. It all shaped who I am now. I'm not better because of it. I'm just clearer. I know what I'll accept, what I won't tolerate, what I'm worth. And that's enough for me right now. So that's it. That's the whole story. No twists. No dramatic ending where we reconcile, or one of us ends up in therapy begging to be saved. Just two people who stopped seeing each other clearly. One who betrayed the other, and a man who decided he wasn't going to let that define him. That's where I am now, starting over, quietly, honestly, and on my own terms.